Greetings world. We are anonymous. Over the past week, we have been researching an influential reformer of the antebellum period. John Humphrey Noyes was an American preacher, radical religious philosopher, and utopian socialist. Noyes was born September 3, 1811 in Brattleboro, Vermont, to John Noyes, a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and Polly Hayes, the aunt of Rutherford B. Hayes, 19th President of the United States. In the fall of 1832, Noyes entered the Yale Theological Seminary so he could devote more time to Bible studies. In his second year at Yale, he made what he considered to be a major theological discovery. While calculating the second coming of Christ, he became convinced that it had already occurred. He concluded that Christ's second coming had taken place in 70 AD, and that therefore, mankind was now living in a new age. With this in mind, Noyes became increasingly concerned with salvation from sin and perfection. He began to argue that unless man was truly free of sin, Christianity was a lie, and that only those who were perfect and free of sin were true Christians. This internal religious crisis brought about a new religious conversion within Noyes, after which he began to proclaim that he did not sin. He formed the idea of perfectionism, that it was possible to be free of sin in this lifetime. His friends thought him unbalanced, and he was called a heretic by his professors. As soon as he converted, Noyes believed that because he surrendered his will to God, everything he did was perfect because his choices came from a perfect heart. Noyes had many criticisms of American society. For example, he claimed that, quote, his new relationship to God cancelled out his obligation to obey traditional moral standards or the normal laws of society, end quote. On February 20, 1834, he declared himself perfect and free from sin. This caused an outrage at his college, and his newly earned license to preach was revoked. Upon expulsion from Yale and the revocation of his license, he returned to Vermont. He continued to preach, declaring, quote, I took away their license to sin and they go on sinning. They have taken away my license to preach but I shall go on preaching, end quote. He attempted to improve life by implementing his idea of a perfect community, and founded so-called utopian societies such as the Putney, Oneida, and Wallingford communities. Most of Noyes' success was posthumous. There were at most 300 members of the Oneida Society, but after his death, the idea of utopia spread. An interesting detail about him was, he was initially a respected scholar, but upon sharing his ideas, he was persecuted. Yet this didn't stop him. John Humphrey Noyes was obsessed with achieving his goal to the point that even after losing most of his friends, being looked down on by professors, and getting his license to preach revoked, he kept faith in his beliefs and continued to spread them. In the early 20th century, Noyes' son Pierpont consolidated the community's industries and focused solely on silverware production. The company became known as Oneida Limited and was the largest producer of flatware for much of the 20th century. This concludes the public service announcement funded by Dotty and Henry. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us. Top left, we see the inhabitants of the Oneida community. On the bottom left, the community mansion hall. And on the right, John Noyes.